Once again, we are here at the drill sets at lawhub.lsac.org, and we're going to pick up with drill set number 1 for the reading comprehension. And we're going to go see our already highlighted main idea sentences from when we engaged question 1 of this passage. And here we're actually going to have kind of a subset of that purpose task with question 3, which is going to ask specifically about an individual statement's purpose. So starting with selecting our highlight tool, we read question 3, and it asks which one of the following most accurately describes the author's primary purpose in the last sentence of the third paragraph of the passage. So we're just being asked to find the author's primary purpose in the last sentence of the third paragraph. So we highlight that explicitly. Now, we're going to scroll down and we can see that that third sentence is actually highlighted. And whenever you've got a specific term or location that is this unique as we have here, you're going to want to read at least a sentence above and a sentence below so that you get proper context and hopefully are able to predict in your own words what the primary purpose in the last sentence of the third paragraph is. And remember that when you're looking at a purpose task, you are being asked to find why the information is there, not simply to find what that information says. So we're going to read a little bit above this highlighted green excerpt and then through the sentence after the green excerpt to then understand and predict in our own words what the purpose would be. So if we read a little bit above, we pick up with, since federal law held that when territory was set aside for inclusion in the Tongass National Forest, that land was thenceforth owned by the United States, any Alaskan native applying for an allotment within the Tongass must have personally used that land as an adult before its inclusion in the forest. The effect of this requirement was to exclude newer generations of Native Alaskans who, becoming familiar with both the English language and the law only after the formation of the Tongass, began to apply for their families' lands under the Act. Because the Alaska Native Allotment Act was implemented in a manner directly contrary to Native law and values, few applicants for allotments were successful, and the majority of lands in the Tongass remained in the hands of federal and private interests. So if we're thinking about why this highlighted green sentence is presented, it's really to explain how that requirement that any Alaskan native applying for an allotment within the Tongass must have personally used that land as an adult before being included in the forest had a negative impact and directly led to the failure of the law or the Native Allotment Act reestablishing native ownership of the land. It's because they were requiring proof of individual usage before the Tongass was set aside. So we've got that prediction now of to basically show how the Tongass ownership couldn't be transferred to these newer generations. So looking at choice A, again, we've got our highlighted tool already selected. Choice A says it was there to argue that unintended negative consequences can sometimes result from attempts to carry out good intentions. Well, we're not talking about good intentions at all at this point. You might select this if you are kind of thinking about the passage overall, but we're not talking about carrying out good intentions in this specific location whatsoever. Then choice B, to provide evidence that many intended beneficiaries of the 1968 court decision. We haven't even talked about the 1968 court decision at this point, so we can eliminate that pretty immediately. Then choice C, to offer an example of Native Alaskan laws and values. We're not actually talking about Native Alaskan laws and values at this point either, so we can eliminate that immediately. Then we've got choice D, to describe a consequence of what the author considers to be a significant flaw in the implementation of the Alaska Native Allotment Act. This is a nice, good, bland summary of our own prediction, and I would say we can select D pretty directly. You do want to check everything just to make sure, though, and if we go to choice E, to demonstrate that the Alaska Native Allotment Act had a long-term impact on the U.S. government's claims to ownership of lands in Southeast Alaska. If anything, this is backwards if we consider that final sentence that we just read in the window about the Alaska Native Allotment Act not being successful. It didn't really have a long-term impact because not many Alaska natives, the Haida and the Tlingit, were actually able to successfully put in a claim. So this is your approach for specific purpose questions. You'll want to read at least a sentence above and a sentence below that term or location referent. Predict broadly what you think the answer should be, and then cross-check your answer choices, highlighting reasons each incorrect option fails to match your prediction.